everyone. Welcome to SmartPath Conversations. My name is Robert Gamble. I'm the co-founder at SmartPath. I'll be speaking today with my co-founder, Jonathan Chizick, and our guest, Matt Bowman, founder of OpenEd. Matt recently had a book come out called Open Education, which we'll be exploring today in the educational topics and learnings that he's had in his career. Matt, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to learn more about you, the team at OpenEd, and the journey that you've been on as an entrepreneur and also as a parent within the homeschooling space.
All right. Well, thanks, Robert and Jonathan. Good to be with you today. And excited to chat about education for families. I love that. My wife, Amy, was my co-founder of OpenEd, and we're entering our 17th year of the company. So it's been pretty exciting ride. And we have 5 children ourselves, and they're all married now. So with all 10, adult children and 4 grandkids. So we're excited to be able to share what we've learned over the years with other families that are thinking, want to think differently about their child's education. So great to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for joining. Saw a lot of similarities as I was reading through the book you put out and kind of the founding story about OpenEd and a lot of the backstory and kind of how it evolved from, hey, all kids are different and need to learn. And it's just kind of saw a lot of our personal experience in that too. And like, wow, really wish there was some other different way to do this versus what we had been doing, and open that Pandora's box of researching what other educational options were out there. And was like, wow, there's so many, right? And that's kind of the backstory and why we got started with SmartPath too, is, helping parents navigate through that. So excited to learn more about OpenEd.
Yeah, for sure. And what you're validating is families who've been thinking differently about their children's education for many years. The book validates everything that they've been thinking about and kind of gives them opportunities to rethink some of things or add additional thoughts. But to those who haven't, it's like mind-blowingly different, right? And so it's really interesting that it opens up the eyes of those who have wondered if they should do something different, but don't know how or how to think about it. But for those like you, Jonathan, have been doing it for a long time, it's validating, and it just helps kind of cement some of the things that you did, even though you didn't know you did it intentionally. You did it, and you did it well. So it's fun to see both sides of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so would love to hear, Matt, a bit more about your journey to homeschooling. And so how did what was that first conversation like? What was that information seeking process like? And then, from there, let's hear about, how that brought you to OpenEd.
No, that's great. So it's funny. My mom was a high school teacher in public ed, and I grew up going to public ed, and never really thought differently about it. Just did that. But I did start my first education company when I was 17, and I just fell in love. It was a summer camp for kids, teaching them sports, which I loved. So kind of merged the idea of I love teaching children and I love sports. So it's like that seemed like a good mix. And so then I became a teacher, graduated with my elementary education degree and license, and taught 6th grade up in Washington State. And, loved it. It was a fun experience, taught there for 5 years. But I got this grant to bring this new thing called the internet into my classroom in 1996. And so it's hard to find anyone who's been doing online education longer than that, because that's really when it really started in terms of online learning. And I just saw kids enjoy being able to access tech, access resources they couldn't otherwise in the classroom. So I fell in love with that. And that led to a career shift and moved into tech in 99 when, the Y2K and all the .com stuff was exploding. I got a job offer from a tech company to run their online education programs for their clients. And so I wasn't a techie myself, but I was an educator that loved tech. And so again, I merged kind of those worlds of learning and, a passion of tech, to be able to just see how online education can serve so many different markets and models and users. And again, at the same time, my wife and I were raising 5 children and seeing that they were all different, even in the same household with the same expectation and cadences and rules and job charts, all 5 were different. And so we started realizing, oh, I wonder if their education should be different too. And so we started looking at the journey of, adapting their education every year. And we ended up with all 5 kids doing a mix of everything you can think of, from district to charter to private to online to home to, mix of it all, hybrid. And so it was fun to just kind of experiment with all of those and engage our children in those conversations. Instead of us just telling them what they should do, we would have that conversation. We, in the book, we have a whole chapter on give your child a voice in this important conversation around learning. And it's really powerful to give them some autonomy. We talk, you can't just, it's not an empty slate, but it is something you can have them fill in, or with some boundaries, some guardrails. And then we realized that there was probably other families that felt the same way. And so that's what kind of spurred us to start OpenEd. Was we figured other families were struggling with, how can we kind of gather some resources, package them together, engage districts and charter schools to be able to also bring funding and extra resources to families. That was really the genesis. And you two would appreciate this, being in the tech startup world. Our original design was we were going to create a tech incubator model where we were going to help 16 and 17-year-olds spin up unicorns, get funded, go big, right? And become Mark Zuckerbergs and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates of the world. And so that was our original design of our program. And the first year, our average age was 9. And so we thought, oh, that's going to be a little bit hard to put 9-year-olds, pitch, in the Shark Tank. But, and at the time, this is 17 years ago, there was so much pressure on kids to go to college that was the only way to be successful, that we couldn't get the attention of any 16 and 17-year-old to be an entrepreneur, because they were too busy focused on early college and college applications and pressure there. So we turned our attention to the 10 to 14-year-old kids who just blossomed with entrepreneurship. They wanted to start businesses every week and adapt and pivot and, get seed funding and then go, self-fund with an invoice. And we just saw that excitement for entrepreneurship just skyrocket. And now we've seen over the years, especially since COVID, that, and, kind of the higher ed has become a little bit messy for most people. And a lot of people are concluding it's not worth the ROI for them to do. And so that cultural shift has then re-sparked entrepreneurship for teenagers. And we loved, I love to see that. And that's just a passion, be able to merge tech with entrepreneurship, with personalized education. Like, that's magic.
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems, definitely one of the things themes that you touched on in your book was the idea of exploring as you learn, right? It seems like
Learning out
learning
loud.
is by definition. Yeah. I mean, learning is by definition, charting the unknown in our own mind, right?
Yep.
We're exploring to look for new information. And so it seems like applying a very standardized process where you're basically just checking boxes is kind of antithetical, right, to the idea of explorative and truly, following interest and going where we're going to be the most excited to learn and maximize the outcomes. So
Yeah, we
that's
actually
really
have many parents say, I got so focused on performance in my schooling system that I forgot to learn. And I don't want that to happen to my child. I want them to learn and learn to love to learn, much more than learn to love to perform. And just the performance side of schooling so often gets in the way of real learning. And so that's a great great
Yeah.
point there, Robert.
I mean, I think if you you asked every parent, would you like your child to have an educational experience that they enjoy learning and they're passionate about whatever they're learning and they just have fun and enjoy it? They'd all say yes. Like, it's kind of like a rhetorical question. Like, why would you not want that? I mean, what do you see as like, so why aren't more parents doing it?
They're terrified. the natural parenting instinct is we're never as good as the Joneses next door. That somehow what we're doing is going to harm our child, or we're going to be the parent that people read about that the kids just were horrible. And so every parent has such insecurity around that it's just by default, no one up until maybe the times are changing, but up until a couple years ago, no one would criticize you for just dropping your kids off at your boundary school.
Mhm.
Whereas now that's shifting just a little bit. It's really interesting. Those that are finding families who are doing something different say, instead of, "Oh, why are you doing that?" they say, "I wish I could do that." And that kind of Overton window we talk about in the book is shifting to say, you know what, parents, you got to get over that insecurity. You can do this. You are not alone. You can find ways to help your children be successful. And the default drop off at a zip code school isn't the safer path anymore. It's actually a more dangerous path for many different reasons. But again, we are careful in the book. We don't bash public ed. If that is working for your child, do it.
Mhm.
Don't pull them out. If it's not working for them, try something different. And we try to give some steps to just begin that journey. Don't do it all at once. Don't just rip the Band-Aid off. That can be really stressful and hard. But I think families and parents are starting to say, okay, I didn't think that my role was to be an education designer as a parent. I thought I could outsource that, as Robert has said, to others. But that's one thing I can't outsource anymore. I need to take charge. And if that works out great for your child to go to the public district school or the charter school nearby, great. But if it's not working, it's time to ask yourself, what else could I do?
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing too, and there's a lack of understanding or awareness of what those other options are.
Yeah.
So I think that holds back some parents too, in that they just don't know what they don't know. If they knew these options existed, then it kind of opens their eyes to, wow, maybe that could be something we could consider.
Yeah, and we start the book with the 5 or 6 biggest questions that we always get. Well, what about socialization? What if, what about college? What about, will my kid not, have too many gaps? What won't they be learning? Will I struggle with the fight every day with our kids in schooling? What if they just want to play computer games all day? Like, we just address all those top 5, top 6 things you hear every single conversation. And we map out answers to those things and say, those aren't your concerns. In fact, when we address each of those, we end up saying, if you really think about it, some of those concerns are heightened by just a standardized schooling setting, not resolved by them. And so if those are real concerns, look at them one at a time and say, well, is this working out the best for my child in the current system they're in? Even private schools don't have some of the flexibility and autonomy and choice and self-learning, directedness that we would love. So it's really, and again, we say strip down those labels of whether you're homeschooled, public school, charter school, private school, micro school. Just drop the labels and embrace open education as the concept of, I'm going to go tap into all of them and realize that one size doesn't fit all, and no matter what the box is. So just pick and choose those things that are working for your child, and you can design something really special.
Yeah, I definitely think there's hesitancy from parents to when they go to think about getting into homeschooling. In their mind, they're probably comparing it to traditional school where is it 8 hours a day? Do I need to be sitting at the table with them the whole time? I know in your book you talk about going from overwhelming to efficient education.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how you kind of reached that, and what does that process look like? I know I'll let you go into more detail, but I know you talk about breaking up learning throughout the day, but with there's interaction and play in between to kind of de-risk it, or kind of bring back to baseline, I guess. And so can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's so much there. Number one, we cite research that says the more structured you make learning, the less learning occurs. So that's a powerful principle. If we just let that sink in, that over the years we've done so much forcing of standardized and structure, that thinking that will improve learning, and the opposite happens. So number one, don't think that more structure means more learning. Number two, we go down the path of play and unstructured play. And particularly with boys, I've done a lot of reading and research around young men and how challenging our current system is for boys in particular. And one of the research we cite is for boys in particular to learn math skills, they need to be physically exhausted first. And I love that. And so I often say to parents, and maybe, it's to get them, maybe it's the tongue in cheek a little bit, but it's not far off to say, okay, reading, writing, arithmetic, let's have those three, but have 20 minutes of writing and go play for an hour, do 20 minutes of reading and go play for an hour, and then go do 20 minutes of math and go play for an hour, then eat some lunch and go explore the world. Right? That's at a minimum. If that's what you did, you would find so much progress for your children, especially boys, to give them a chance to just learn a little, play a lot, learn a little, play a lot, learn a little, play a lot, and go explore your community. And we say, find problems in your community that your children can solve. And that begins that entrepreneurship journey, that begins that community investment, to really find tangible opportunities in the community, in your neighborhood. Start in your house, neighborhood, community. What are some tangible problems you can go solve, and create a project around that and figure out how to solve those problems? The learning curve you'll get on that will far outweigh any book you read, or any textbook you try to follow or complete.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all, coming from a tech background and entrepreneurship background, appreciate the fact that you may go through an educational process that's highly standardized, where there's an outcome that you're essentially just required to get to, right? But I think we can all say that when you get into the real world and you get into your career, there's not a standardized process to follow to solve the problem that's in front of you. And so, especially I think entrepreneurship and homeschooling really form a really perfect kind of union in that sense, where you're starting from, well, let's identify a problem, let's identify something that people need or something that we want to change, and then figure out what is the 0 to 1 step, right? And so I think that's a really powerful tool for learning that you've highlighted.
Oh, I love it. And one of the stories we share is that I took a group of average age of 10 to an eBay headquarters. And we had kind of a field trip meetup, and invited the executives from eBay to share, their story, whatever. And then I said, hey, give the audience a challenge that you're really facing today at eBay, and see if some of these 10-year-olds can't come up with some solutions that you haven't thought of. And they're like, oh, fun, Matt. That sounds great. Yeah, sure. We'll do that. And so they shared a couple of, quarterly rocks they were working on, challenges they were trying to solve as a leadership team. And they gave 10 minutes to these groups of, we had 100 kids in the room, and gave them each, 10 minutes to come up with a presentation of, 1 or 2 ideas. The eBay executives were blown away by the tangible solutions those kids were presenting, and admitted that it were better ideas than they got from their leadership team in their last QBR, right? So it was just like, kids can think differently about problems that adults can't even see, through the trees. So it's fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I think the another benefit that we've certainly seen with our kids, and I think a lot of parents don't necessarily understand, is a significant benefit of doing open ed, whether it's homeschooling, whatever you're doing, something that has a lot more flexibility, is that flexibility, because it allows you to do things in your community, whether that's entrepreneurship or volunteering with a nonprofit, doing FFA, like 2 days a week. Like, yep. It's hard to do these sorts of community or entrepreneurial things between 8 and 9 p.m. 4 nights a week. Like, if you have hours during a day, maybe you become a black belt in karate because you're able to go to the dojo 3 days a week for 4 hours. Like, you can't do that if you're 5 days a week, 7 hours each day in school.
Oh, that flexibility is such a great experience. It was funny during COVID. You can imagine our enrollment in our program just skyrocketed in
Mm,
like 3 weeks. Just more growth than we'd ever seen ever. But the parents were telling us, "Hey, I'm only doing this for a year."
mm,
That was all the applications and entrants. They're like, "Hey, I'm just going to do it for a year, but so just don't get mad at me or whatever if am gone after a year." And we're like, yeah, whatever, just come and well, if we can help you, let's help you. At the end of that first year, almost all of them stayed and said, okay, just one more year because still working things out with COVID or whatever. After the second year, they're like, we're never going back. The flexibility is so enjoyable for our kids are happy. We're not on the rat race. We are have time to think. We have time to just engage in community activities. And at night, it's funny. It was many families say your program has returned our family nights to us
mm.
because a traditional family setting, the kids go to school, they come home at 3, they're doing piano lessons or city soccer or whatever. You rush home at 6, you have some dinner, and then from 7 to 8, 7 to 9, it's like, okay, what homework do we have to do? What things do we have to get done and get ready for? And you're stressed about if I miss something, and then you repeat it again the next day. Whereas families who are doing education during the day then have dinner and have the nights free. They go do stuff. They enjoy time together. They go to the park. They play. They're not totally stressed and burned out over what's due tomorrow. That because they've done the learning during the day as it should be. So it's super fun to see. And to your point earlier, Jonathan, that why aren't more doing it? They don't. They're scared to just take that one leap, but if they do it, they just realize how much more enjoyable it is, and it's actually less stressful. People think it's more stressful to homeschool or to open ed, but it actually becomes less stressful because it's not so much of a race that you're missing. You have your children come home every night with what's due tomorrow and what's the test tomorrow, and do you have for every 7 classes that you're in, and that's more stressful for sure.
Yep. Yep. Definitely less stressful in the mornings, most mornings too, when
Yeah.
you're not all trying to run off to work and get 3 kids to 3 different schools all at the same time. And yeah, that can
Exactly.
be pretty stressful.
Yeah, and again, we had 5 kids, and at one point, I think they were going to 4 different schools. So that was hard, but we did that because they were choosing to go to those 4 different schools, and so we couldn't fault them for that. So it took some more work on our side to carpool and to engage with others to help. Like, don't be shy to ask for help because your child's worth it. To give them those opportunities that they're asking for. Because all of a sudden it's
Yeah,
gone, right? All 5 kids are grown, and my wife and I are trying to figure out what to do next after they're all married, and so anyway, it's a fun time to be able to say there is this window of time that might be extremely stressful and chaotic and messy, but take the leap. You can do it, and I think you won't regret it.
Yeah, one thing we talk about a lot about is that homeschooling has grown quite a bit over the last, especially 5 years. But it's about 6.5% of all kids K through 12 in the United States. There's another, interest level that would bring us up to 18%. So how do you think about connecting those dots? I mean, a little bit topical for SmartPath as well, given that
Yeah.
that's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to take away that feeling of going to a restaurant and then you open up the menu and there's 300 items in there and you're like, oh, okay, I need to go to a different restaurant now. I have choice paralysis, right? But how do you see the journey or the process for kind of converting that intention to execution for these families where they can say, okay, you know what, I feel ready to do this.
Yeah, and I think SmartPath is on definitely choosing the right path there, which is helping families navigate the myriad of choices that are out there, and look for that. I can't remember what you call it on your website, just the education, the explorer, the helper to
Mhm.
help map what you're doing to
Mhm.
your child. So uh, just know that there are so many resources available, especially over the last few years, and the opportunities are just endless to customize your child's education. And now that can be overwhelming. So you got, find ways to engage with friends and neighbors and families and online tools like SmartPath to be able to help you navigate those things, is great. But just know that you can do it. Like it's not something that is not accessible to all. You might have to make some different sacrifices on time and budget or working or whatever. But again, there's this window of time with children that you have them around, that is really the opportunity to take, and then you figure out each step day by day, but you can do it.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so I think, I guess the next interesting or next kind of topic we can talk about is, I think AI is very topical right
Yeah.
now. We definitely see this with the incubator program that we went through. There were a lot of teams working on AI, AI tutors, AI co-pilots for learning. At least I'll say my position is that, I think AI creates the opportunity for there to be just more optionality, right? I think we're seeing this just explosion of resources and tools, and teams that are educators that are creating content can do it much faster. Um, as we kind of are in the early stages of this, how do you see this industry developing in the long term? How do you think about how do we continue to adapt what we're all building, to really expand and leverage these new tools?
Yeah, so AI is a great topic. What's interesting, kind of over the last 30 years of my oldest is 32. So for the last 30 years, my wife and I have been identifying, looking at trends that impact the overall education landscape. And of course, you have the internet was a big one, smartphones was a big one, uh, COVID was a big one. Then I would even insert there higher ed getting it wrong. It was a big one, like kind of overcharging, under delivering, that whole world. But then AI is this latest one that you stack all those together, and it seems like AI is the one that is making the parents feel most uncomfortable about just defaulting to a traditional education, because it terrifies them not knowing where their kid is going to be able to apply test prep skills, right? Which is what public ed produces, is performance, test prep skills, just completion, and none of that, all of that's displaced by AI. So it's one of those things that after all these kind of game changers, AI is the driver of most parents saying, okay, now's the time I've got to think differently about my child's education, which is great. So then you shift into, okay, what's that tool looking like? What is it doing? And I think at a base level, it's a very helpful tool that it can help give prompts and gives ideas and give resources. But as we know, much of what you'll get produced is not all that great, and so it actually triggers learning, because you submit in a prompt, and you get an essay or an outline or a resource or a video, and you're like, okay, that was good, but it still lacks this. And that kind of opportunity is where learning is happening, because you're able to kind of take away the mysteriousness of what's behind the curtain of learning, and you get it, and you're like, say, well, is it good or not?
Mm-hmm.
And that judgment call is where the next layer of learning is going to come. And that's what excites me about AI, is that it might be triggering more creativity in adults or in children, because it gives something that is not all that great and says, how do I make it better? And that could be reprompting or resubmitting, but even just that act of resubmitting and evaluating is a higher level thinking skill than just completing a test, right? So in our book, we quote a girl that I remember reading about, who said, the teacher was criticizing kids using AI for assignments, and the smart girl said, if AI can answer it, you shouldn't have asked me to do it, right? And so it's like that's where I think we're headed, is let's get beyond these mundane things and use our human divine capabilities to do creativity and beyond that an artificial intelligence can't do, because it needs creativity, thought,
Mhm.
and application, even more so, of bringing it local. This is the other thing. Our family, we have Sunday dinners with all our kids and their spouses, and AI came up, and our daughter-in-law shared this insight, which I thought was really powerful, which was, this was after the release of Google's Veo 3 video. And it was like, you can't tell the difference. And even that was 3 weeks old, right? Because last week, something else from, ByteDance or whatever is even better, right? And so you cannot tell the difference. So then she pointed out, maybe AI is going to return all of us to be more community centered, because you're going out in your neighborhoods and community. That's real. Whereas you can't tell what's real digitally anymore. And so wouldn't that be cool, as if AI actually produced us to turn into our local cities and communities and neighborhoods, and connected on a human level, more than this social media trends over the last 10 years has isolated so many people. So maybe that will be a good thing of AI too.
Maybe that'd be a good one.
Yes.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that you talk about preparing kids for pathways after, K through 12, and starting to think about, where do you want to lead your life? I know that's one thing that Jonathan and I have come across in many conversations with the parents that we've spoken with, is that, and kind of going back to your point about the missed ROI of higher education as well, it seems kind of bringing these two trends together. There's been a lot of job destruction, within entry-level jobs from AI, but I think, where I'm optimistic personally is the requirements and kind of overhead to ideating and building a business or an MVP or whatever it might be. AI really kind of removes that. You see a lot of teams going to, the Series A, Series B, maybe even an IPO with 10 to 15 people, right?
Right.
And so it totally changes the cost structure and dynamics of going and building a business. And so it definitely seems that this entrepreneurial path, now that the barriers have been lowered significantly, is kind of primed as a way to say, oh, let's build a bunch of amazing small businesses, and we don't need to raise $10 million to go do it, right? I think it really opens the doors for kids that just want to jump right into that path.
I totally agree. In fact, I run every year a young entrepreneurship award competition for teenagers to apply for our YEA YEA.education if anyone wants to apply. But this last year, one of our finalists was a 14-year-old whose company was AI services for local small businesses, and it was awesome. And his developer was like 12. And so they basically go into a small business in their community and say, what are some of the pain points you have with data, with automation, with organization of spreadsheets or processes? And they would come up with AI solutions for these, HVAC companies, or the plumber, or an art studio or a karate studio. And they would just go, for $500, they would create an AI efficiency solution for that small business. And I'm like, that is cool. And it's, him and a 12-year-old doing it. So it was just like super interesting how AI can open up entrepreneurship paths that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely
14-year-old management consultants. You don't need an MBA to do it, right?
Exactly. And I actually, on that note, I quote IBM executive that I was meeting with said he'd rather hire a failed entrepreneur than an MBA from Columbia. Like, that was his quote to me directly. And that's what these kids aren't doing, even failed entrepreneurship. They're doing successful ones. But the idea that they can have a management consulting company as a 14-year-old, because the adults owners don't get AI, and because I hardly get it. And these kids are able to just navigate it so comfortably that they can be a management, basically as a management services company at age 14 or 15, producing real tangible value for businesses. Something that a Bain Capital never would do for an HVAC company in your town. But here's a kid doing it at that level of, efficiency and productivity and automation, and then it can go to, it automates text and customer feedback. And so now the customer is getting a better experience
Mhm.
too, right? So if we can improve that value chain for everybody with AI tools like that, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's certainly thought provoking to recognize that there are more AI native 14-year-olds with consulting businesses than there are AI native consultants at McKinsey.
They really are. Like this kid said, yeah, he's been doing AI for a couple years. I'm like, well, then that's as much as anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like there's this opportunity for, just to go out there and find things to fix, right? I think you highlighted it, just now, but there's these old businesses that, probably have people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s,
Yep.
80s, right? And they're thinking, okay, well, am I really going to learn AI? Probably not, unless they're really motivated to. And now you have this whole generation of kids that are growing up using these tools, and so kind of getting back to your point about the teacher who was criticizing students for using AI. Yeah, maybe it's a bit. I personally think it's a little bit short-sighted, given that these kids are going to be expected to use AI in day-to-day work. I believe it was. Was it Stripe or was it Klarna? There was one company recently that released a memo that said every single person, every single manager needs to stop what they're doing right now and tell me how you're going to use AI to automate, X%
Yep.
of your team's day-to-day work. How are you building this into your thought process around ideation, new product development, project management, whatever it might be? And then for anytime you want to go and hire somebody in the future, you need to explain why AI can't do what you're hiring this role for. Like what's the thing that this person is going to do that we can't already do via automation and integration with these tools?
Yes. And again, I want to go back to this concept of let AI do the mundane or the AI capable tasks, and don't view that it's just replacing you as a human. View that it's freeing up you as a human to
Yep.
think more creatively and more strategically than you've been allowed to, because you've been consumed with tasks, right? So view that as an opportunity to level up your creativity and think like a problem solver, and really try to add value to your organization and to your team, to your business, to your community. Those are things that humans can do that I think is super exciting.
Yeah, there's definitely, we talk about these big shifts in technology, and it seems the theme is generally, when something that has been a barrier or yeah, difficult to tackle before becomes commoditized, right? That's when these big shifts happen. Well, it
Yep.
seems like the AI transition is almost commoditizing time in a way, and giving people 10x leverage over what they're able to get done before. So it's really, yeah, exciting to think about when you have 90% of your time back, you get to spend more time thinking and problem solving and getting away from filled out my weekly report or daily report or whatever it might be. You actually get to go right back to the core of building.
Yeah, I love that. And then you apply that to the education scenario where 7.5 hours in a classroom is not the most efficient use of time for many of those students. And so that's where you kind of say, what can we do quicker, faster, better, so that it frees up for us to solve problems, engage with others, learn some critical thinking, instead of just spending so much time on just tactical things that really may not be the most best use of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how do you think about looking forward for OpenEd? What's next that you're building? How do you see the development of the business in the future? Where do you see what opportunities are most exciting for you within that space?
Yeah, so I'd say, a couple of things. One, so the book is open education, which is the broader category. So that's what I love spending my time on, where, SmartPath fits as a sliver inside of open education, the movement, the idea, the concept, the mindset. So definitely very much supporting this path that parents are starting to really say, okay, it's time. I need to think differently, adopt an open education mindset. So I'm super excited about just that societal movement that is happening, where parents are taking that role seriously. And again, to be clear, if the default local school is working, that's great. I do not criticize any of those choices. Just be intentional about that choice. So then as it comes to open ed, again, as a sliver amongst the open education movement, open ed, the company, we're doing some exciting things just around creating a platform, similar, vision of SmartPath, of just getting people access to a marketplace of resources and helping them navigate those. We'd love to add SmartPath to our platform. So that's a side conversation we should have, of adding your tools and programs to our marketplace. But then we're just looking at, helping districts too. One of the things that we've always done in open ed is help the public school system enter this world too, and not just leave them behind. And so we reach out to districts and charters around the country and work with them to serve students in their state under their under their umbrella, and help bring those resources of the district to families, from teachers, technology, curriculum, assessments, whatever the families need. So that we'll continue to do that. We're opening up new states every month. We find new districts that want to participate in this new world, and that's really impressive to see the forward thinking districts that are out there that want to do something cool and bridge that world with families that want to do something differently, like your families do. We also just spun up for this fall. We're about to launch our first private pay option for open ed. So we'll have an open ed accredited online academy, and we're trying to drive those costs down as low as we can and still provide great flexibility and personalization. So I think it's only $2,900 a year for a K-8 student to do our private school academy, and then I think $2,500 for high school. And then we have an early college option for $5,000 a year, that they'll get their associate and bachelor's degree if they want. They can go all the way through, till they're 20 and only pay $5,000 a year and get their bachelor's degree. So super excited about some of those private pay options that we're introducing to families that don't live in a state that we operate in with a district, or they choose to just be 100% independent. They don't want to go through a district and be part of the public ed system. So just offering all those things. And then, as you know, the education savings account, the ESAs that are adopted in now like 17 states, tapping into those resources to help families bridge, from no resources to full resources, and how to do that smartly and effectively, for each of their children, is a great space to live in. So there's just so many opportunities ahead. It's super exciting to be able to create a platform that does that, and parents and teachers that are here to support families who want to embark in that, and not be alone. So we're here to help.
Wonderful.
Awesome. It's a good time to, seems like a good time to be in this space. A lot of momentum behind it.
Yeah. And Jonathan, you live in Texas, right? They passed the largest ESA ever of $1 billion fund to help families to do that. So we're definitely interested in seeing where Texas launches next year for that. So that should be fun.
It should be. I think a lot of people are interested in seeing how that rolls out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess SmartPath is a bit earlier in our journey than OpenEd. I think
but you're there. You're doing it. So just keep up the good work. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, any for Jonathan and I, or for any AI native 14-year-old consultants out there, any advice? What's your advice for people just getting started on this entrepreneurship journey? I'm sure we'd appreciate it, but also there's lots of people who are going to be jumping into this now. What's your advice to entrepreneurs that are just starting their journey, or maybe a year in or 2 years in?
Yeah. So two things. One is just do it. Just start. Don't think that you can pre-analyze everything before you launch. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis. Just go do it. Just start and pivot, adapt, iterate. Just start. Just find value and start. So that's the first principle. The second one is once you've started and are going, my favorite line comes from Seth Godin, marketing genius, who says, and I've always adopted this, be irresistible to a small group of passionate sneezers. So if you can break down each of those, it's just like be irresistible to a group that wants to tell your story for you and will share your message. Word of mouth is the best, and especially in education, we often need a word of mouth validator instead of just a Google ad when you're choosing your child's education. So find a way to be irresistible to your customers that are even the narrowest customers that will shout your story from the rooftops. So if you can solve that, that's a great way to help you organically grow.
Yeah. It seems, again, Nike said it. You just said it just now. Just do it, right? There's maybe a little bit of irony in the fact that it's the same advice for families getting into homeschooling too, right?
Yes.
It can be a big step, starting the entrepreneurship path, starting to do something different. It's about, kind of that being a little bit vulnerable with what you're open to, and in terms of starting that journey. But again, really, it's just you just got to go do it. So
I guess I'll add one more on that one to demystify the pursuit of perfection that trips us up as parents and entrepreneurs. We have a whole chapter on the joy of average. Embrace, this is the funny story we share that I'll end with. We were in a store somewhere with our kids, and there was a world's greatest mom mug on the shelf. And they're like, hey, Mom, we should get that for you. And she said, no way, I'm not the world's greatest mom. That don't give me that title. That's a perfection status that there's no way I can ever attain. And so when our kids, they designed a world's okayest mom shirt, and she wears that proudly. And then when we had our first grandchild, they announced world's okayest grandma, right? And so we embrace in the Bowman family and on OpenEd, embrace, we can be the okayest, and that's just great. Don't try to hold this perfection status, because you'll never attain it and feel frustrated and feel insecure. And so embrace okayest in entrepreneurship, and then embrace it as a parent, improve, as you go, but don't hold the standard of perfection. You'll never get it.
I love it. Okayest. I love it. Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, let's go build the okayest company.
There's something to that, right?
No, yeah, don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the principle. Yeah, you want to still have high standards and do great stuff, but don't beat yourself up for falling short of the perfect everything is tomorrow. It just doesn't affect the perfect everything instead of a pursuit of perfection.
Amazing. Yeah, well, I really appreciate the conversation. I know we're reaching our time here, but Matt, just wanted to say thank you from everybody at the SmartPath team. We really enjoyed the conversation with you. It's been a pleasure hearing more about your journey, hearing more about what OpenEd is doing. I know we're huge fans of your work, and I think it's really beautiful to see entrepreneurs getting into the education space. Right, that's definitely. There's a moment where I think education has been a little bit neglected historically by the kind of tech crowd, and it's people like you, like us, who are saying, "Hey, we're at a moment where we can really go improve the education system and really look at how we empower kids and give them and their parents more leverage over education." And so it's a really awesome critical moment we're in, and I think this conversation was really fun for both Jonathan and I. So I just want to say thank you and really appreciate the time today.
Oh, keep up the good work, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.